Hi everyone, this is a new setting. Welcome. My name is Francesca, and instead of doing some geopolitical content, we're doing some more close to home political content today. See, I had a friend have a conversation with me recently regarding the presidential election this year, and there's a lot on the line with the funding of war and genocide on the other side of the planet, as well as the rights of American citizens living in the States under threat. This conversation basically culminated in the idea of voting for third party, and personally, I wasn't really sold on it. I've been incredibly interested in politics since the 2016 presidential election, and if you know anything about US politics, candidates running third party hardly get publicized, let alone win. Needless to say, I left that conversation with some doubts, but also curiosities, which drove me to want to do more research, and here we are. So third parties or independent candidates are people who are running for office without attachment to either of the major parties, Democrat and Republican. Unfortunately for these candidates, our country, our media, our voting systems are heavily structured in favor of the binary system. This is a decades-long issue. Our Constitution mentions nothing of parties, and despite that, two major parties started emerging in 1800. But there's always been criticism. Our very first president famously said, "Let me warn you, in the most solemn manner, against the baneful effects of the spirit of party." Hence why I'm making this video. I wanted to more closely examine what it means to run third party and what that means for the American political climate at large. So to start, have third party candidates ever won the presidential election? As long as I have been alive, they definitely haven't. And over the course of history, the only person who technically runs independent and wins is the first president, George Washington. Considering that was about 250 years ago, not a good track record. So let's break this down further. In modern times, third parties such as the Green Party have emerged to represent issues that the dominant parties don't find politically palatable. This was explained by Dr. Tammy Greer at an FPC briefing in Washington, D.C. earlier this year. These types of issues are very often seen as very progressive and are sometimes labeled as socialists, so they don't fit in the boxes that the red and blue parties have set. With the example of the Green Party, this has meant the environment and environmental law. In other cases, it's universal basic income. This year, it seems, the issue is the amount of money the US is giving other countries to commit violent acts. In recent elections, there's always been a Green Party candidate and a Libertarian candidate, but they rarely get more than 1% of the votes, according to CNN. The years when they do relatively well tend to be the years that the candidate who got elected won the electoral vote but not the popular vote, like Donald Trump in 2016. I often hear the argument that votes for third party take away votes from stronger candidates that could have won. Like in 2016, for example, people say that if people didn't vote third party, Hillary Clinton would have won. And listen, I study media, so a huge question I have about the situation of third party is, where is their coverage? Scroll through any major news website and all you really see is Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And personally, I listen to the New York Times Daily podcast, and all of not most of their coverage on the election so far has been about Kamala versus Trump. About 2 million people listen to the Daily, to put into perspective, and some of those people, that might be their only news source for the day, for the week, for the month, for the whole election cycle. And so they're not getting coverage about third-party candidates. So it makes me wonder, do third-party candidates have so little support and votes because of a lack of coverage? Or does a lack of coverage lead to little support and votes? Honestly, it's a paradox in and of itself, and NPR wrote about this in 2016. Low poll numbers discourage media outlets to spend money and resources on covering unpopular candidates. And when it comes to televised debates, some of the most viewed election events, candidates need to have a certain standing in the polls to be able to participate. specifically 15%. And this isn't random, by the way. This was established by the Commission of Presidential Debates, the CPD, a nonpartisan and independent organization. On their website, they say they ran an analysis and concluded that a level of 15% support of the national electorate is achievable by a significant third party or independent candidate who has captured the public's interest. I think this is fair. 15% is still relatively low, but a manageable threshold. And we have had third-party candidates in the past reach this threshold, such as George Wallace in 1968, John Anderson in 1980, and Ross Perot in 1992.
I believe that there is so much waste around here. And again, every time you get into, see, I'm the only guy that talks numbers. I love this. Nobody else will even talk about it. As I've said, it's like a crazy ant in the basement. Everybody knows she's there, but nobody talks about her. I'm talking about it.
So it is possible for third-party candidates to get enough support to get coverage. It just hasn't happened in a long time. Whether or not this is indicative of a system that increasingly works against third-party candidates is up for debate, and we'll talk about that in a sec. Furthermore, not only are third-party candidates simply not included in mainstream media, but they are not taken seriously when they are.
Trump right now is in a tailspin. Kamala is now leading. Even in the right-leaning polls, she's leading, and she's up especially bigly with young voters. According to the latest NBC News poll, 50% of voters from Gen Z support Harris, whereas only a third prefer Donald Trump. The rest are voting for Skibbity Toilet or something? I don't know what that is, but...
Now let's be clear, Jimmy Kimmel is an entertainment personality, not a political commentator. But a lot of people watch him. I would even go so far to say that the average American gets their political news in the form of memes and late night talk shows. So stuff like this can be really harmful to third-party candidates, and in some ways, democracy as a whole. People aren't even aware of their choices, and when they are made aware, it's not serious. Of course, sometimes third-party candidates aren't taken seriously because they're not playing within the binary system. They don't get money for campaign funding from PACs, they're not reaching voters through political advertising, and they're not rage baiting the way we've seen Democratic or Republican candidates have. And they don't have a lot of recognition in politics because of their third-party standing. Even more so, over the past century, legislators have put in laws in place that actively make it more difficult for third-party candidates to appear on the ballot. Fusion laws, sore loser laws, and the general nationalization of politics makes it easier for the two major parties, harder for the rest. I'm not trying to be completely pessimistic about this, though. Even though third-party candidates may not win, they still have a significant impact on how voters perceive the electorate and issues being discussed or not discussed. In this upcoming election, I've heard more and more of my peers talking about voting third party. And as I'm filming this, the third party candidates are Jill Stein for the Green Party, Cornel West of the People's Party, and Chase Oliver for the Libertarian Party. Personally, the candidate I've heard the most about is Jill Stein, maybe because this also isn't her first time running. She's a physician, and I think that what is drawing a lot of people to her right now is her stark anti-war agenda. And as I'm filming this, it is the aftermath of the presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. I watched the debate all the way through, and there wasn't a single mention of opponents besides the two. They're not worried about third-party candidates themselves, but they are worried about losing voters to them. Third-party candidates are arguably healthy for our democracy because 1, they influence optics on the two major parties, and 2, they bring attention to issues that the two major parties don't. Whether or not they win, they still persist against the two-party dominance and have an impact on elections. I want to be incredibly clear. I am not here to tell you to vote one way or the other, to tell you to vote third party or to not vote third party. I wanted to present the research that I have done on the nature of what third-party candidates represent and what they do and what this means for our democracy, but it's up to you on who you vote for. Everyone's vote is valid and should be respected, at least that's what I believe. I will, however, always encourage registering to vote if you are eligible. Go vote in November or mail-in vote before. It's one of the ways we can actually have an influence and have a voice in national politics. But don't forget about your local politicians and your local issues as well, because it is equally important to be educated and aware about local issues and local politicians as it is to be aware of national ones. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I had a really good time researching and really digging into what third-party candidacy means, both historically and in our current context, now that we're coming up on the 2024 presidential election. I hope you learned something from this video as well, and if you have any questions or you feel like something was missing or you wanted to add to this discussion, please comment down below, and as always, all my resources will be in the description below if you want to dig a little deeper into anything I was talking about. But that's all for me. Go out and make good choices. Bye.